Well, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Welcome to 2026 with something about Catholics. And it's been a little while since we recorded, but I think that's just kind of the nature of the beast.
I was also sick and we attempted to record and it would have been a nightmare to edit, right?
Yeah. Plus, it was a lot of trying to stifle coughing and everything else. So probably would have been just as miserable to record.
And having a hard time breathing. You know, the normal stuff that seems to be going around for everybody.
Yeah.
It's like the changing weather where we live. I don't know if it's the entire country, but at least where we live, it's like 70 one day, 20 degrees the next day. Today, there's a possibility of snow, and it hasn't happened.
Which is disappointing and sad.
We're so sad. There's just rain, which is usually a happy thing for me, but really wanted to see some snow.
I'm still holding on for it, so maybe, just maybe.
We'll have a miracle today.
Maybe. We'll see. I know that we haven't done the show in a while, and so just to say up front, I've had a couple people reach out to me and ask if we're still doing this, and we are.
Same.
I think with the sickness that we just talked about and then getting into December and early January, we just have a lot of family kind of spread all over the place here in in North Carolina. And it just felt like every other weekend we were doing something, or even every other day, right? I know for my job, as an example, I took off nearly 2 weeks, and almost all of that was doing something with family in one way, shape, or form. And I think the couple days that I did have off, they were like recharge time.
Yeah.
So it just felt like it wasn't really like, even though you take time off, it wasn't really time that you can dedicate to things like this. As a matter of fact, I got a couple books for Christmas and I've barely even cracked any of them too. So
they'll be fun to hear from you when you do read them though, because they're Christian, Catholic centered, it looks like.
Yeah. I got into Trent Horn at kind of the tail end of last year. It's kind of a recommendation from a friend of mine. And it's kind of funny because at the same time I started listening to Catholic Answers Live, and I found out that you could just get them on the podcast app. So I have an app on my phone called Podcast Addict, and it's basically just like a gateway for all of the podcasts that I want to listen to, whether it's Joe Rogan or stuff about movies or whatever. And I found out that Catholic Answers Live goes up on the podcast app. There's a feed for it. And so, whatever that show is, whether it's 2 hours or 3 hours, you get all of those little chunks. And I kind of listen to them sometimes like on the way to work or on the way back from work or while I'm at the gym. And they've just been a lot of fun to listen to, and fun in the sense that the conversations are really interesting. And then secondly, I've really grown to love the idea of apologetics and the defense of Catholicism. And lo and behold, Jimmy Akin is on there a great deal of the time, and he's a very, very interesting person to listen to as far as Catholicism is concerned, because he's always got an interesting angle, an interesting thought process. He's really calm. He doesn't seem to get heated. And he just has a very interesting way of speaking about the faith. But when he's not on, Trent Horn seems to be on. And again, it's kind of just an interesting intersection of recommendations from a friend of mine, and then all of a sudden he's on the show. So I'm not necessarily sure it's a sign or anything, but it's kind of nice to have been given the gift, if you will, of maybe some of his wisdom and insight from a Catholicism perspective, more specifically on apologetics, because I just think apologetics is such an interesting piece of the faith, and I think it's something we should all probably be a little bit more aware of, because there's a lot of defense of different pieces of the faith and answers to questions that like Protestants might ask you. Why are you Catholic? Why do you worship Mary? All of these questions that seem to be very popular and continue to pop up. There are answers to them, and there are people that are far smarter than I that have come to really intelligent conclusions and defenses, and continuing to listen to that and continuing to listen to people ask those questions on Catholic Answers, I think has just been it's like unlocked this other world for me that it's just so convenient to listen to. So I know that's a lot of words, but
I've learned a lot walking by while you're listening or hearing it when I'm sitting in the same room as you. It's been interesting. So what you're listening to is Catholic Answers podcast?
Right. Well, it's the radio show. And then I think that they take the radio show from the previous day and they just upload it to the podcast app. So you can basically listen to what was discussed the day before.
Interesting. I was just clarifying for anybody listening if they want to go check it out.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, yeah, it's just a weird, I didn't know it was available before, but listening to Trent Horn and now listening to this, and then Trent Horn is sometimes on this. It's so weird how it's all kind of just come together. And even more strange is I'm a big fan of the Daily Wire. I really like a lot of the hosts on there and their view of current events through what is traditionally a religious lens, whether it's Ben Shapiro and his Jewish background or Michael Knowles or Matt Walsh and their Catholic perspective. I often find that looking at current events in the news through that lens puts more of an interesting spin on things, because I do think at the heart of politics, religion should guide the way that we govern, right? Again, I have a very good friend who I've had a number of discussions recently who was talking about the fact that he almost wished it was a requirement that politicians had families and children because it just puts a different spin. You think about things differently. You value things differently that you might not otherwise.
Yeah. It's also hard right now too with the people that are married or with someone and would like to have children and
right.
can't.
Well, so part of the reason that I bring up the Daily Wire, though, is just like with Trent Horn and reading a little bit from him and listening to his podcast and YouTube show, and then having him pop up on Catholic Answers. With the Daily Wire, they recently took on Matt Fradd from Pints with Aquinas.
Yeah.
And it's yet another interesting crossover. And if you want to go even a step further down the rabbit hole, Matt Fradd has been advertising for a company called Truthly, which is one of the founders right at our parish at St. Mark in Huntersville. So
yeah, I think
it's so many steps down the rabbit hole now. It's like Daily Wire and then Pints with Aquinas and then Truthly. It's so funny how it all just gets connected at once.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So
I've been getting into attempting to go through the Bible in a year again for, what is it, the 5th year running?
Right.
I'm the farthest that I've been, and it's been really helpful because things outside of work and listening to that feel hard right now. So I've noticed that it's kind of buoyed me a little bit to listen to it. And I'm trying not to be as strict with myself as I have been in the past. It's like, if I'm listening and I know the next day is going to be really hard to listen to, but I have time that day to listen to 2 of them, I'll listen to 2 of them. Or if I know that I'm going to have a hard next couple of days, just let that go and then catch up as I can. And I'm pretty close to on track, so I just don't want it to get too far away from me like I have before and completely dropped off. I think I've made it like a week at the most in the past. And then I just get so down on myself that I've missed stuff and completely give up. So I'm trying to be a little bit different with my approach, and it seems to be working.
Yeah. That's that was difficult for me because I really wanted to try and follow along with that, and then I missed a couple days, and then
It's hard.
I also felt like, and it's not Father Mike's fault, so I would never turn anybody off from listening to this. I think it's more of a me problem, but start to go down the road of listening and just kind of fade out. And then by the time that I would, like, my brain would go, oh, wait a second, he just spoke for 5 minutes about something and I didn't get or absorb any of it.
Yeah. I heard someone talking about he also has the catechism in a year.
Right.
I'd like to listen to that as well. But
and Father Mark Mary does the rosary in a year,
commitment.
I think.
Yes. Another thing that I'm interested in. But there was one point where Father Mike said, we're going to go through a lot of like heavy topics, or take more to, maybe it would be better if you sat down and listened to them topics. And he was like, even if you just have it playing in the background, like basically trying to say, don't be so hard on yourself. Just listen to it. What absorbs will absorb. And then you can always go back to it. And that's kind of helping me right now with Bible in a year as well. Cause I know I'm not going to be able to, I don't know where that comes from. It must be something in school where I was not the best reader at first. And if I don't feel like I'm absorbing things right away, then I just completely like beat myself up and there's no point in this and give up.
Yeah, I am the same way.
And I'm trying not to be that way this time. Pick my Bible up and follow along when I can and just listen in my ears when I can't.
Another thing that I have been listening to and kind of engaging with is there used to be on EWTN, and I don't know if he's on EWTN anymore, but when I was growing up, I remember my folks got a satellite. So we had switched over from cable to satellite, and one of the reasons my mom was excited about that is because EWTN was part of the package.
Oh.
But, my mom really liked Mother Angelica, and then I remember in between segments, there was a gentleman named Raymond Arroyo who would do all kinds of news. He was basically like the anchor man for EWTN.
Yep.
And then a couple of years back, I remember seeing that he was on Fox News. He became like a regular guest on Laura Ingraham's show.
Uh-huh.
And I just found it really odd to see him go from EWTN to Fox. And the more and more I see with him and read about him, he's just an interesting guy. And he now has, I'm saying he now, maybe I just discovered it, but he's got his own show that he does weekly called Arroyo Grande. And it's really good. Like one week he seems to interview somebody that's famous. And then the next week he does, it's called his Prayerful Posse, where he has a priest that he's very good friends with, and then a theologian, a Catholic theologian, and they'll engage on whatever's top of mind in Catholicism. And I found this to be interesting because Charlotte, North Carolina has become a regular topic of conversation on their show.
I was just going to say that.
For those of you that don't know out there, Charlotte right now has gone through a change in bishops, right? I think it's been approximately a year, if not a little bit more than a year.
More.
Where Bishop Martin has, he has instructed the priests in North Carolina, at least in the Diocese of Charlotte, to remove the kneelers. And there's been a lot of pushback, and it's been a lot of very interesting feelings and observations, especially at St. Mark, where we have kneelers, right? We, go to St. Mark's, and one of the things about that is as you walk up to the altar, there's kneelers and
Communion rails where you can kneel when you receive
you can
what we
receive on the
believe is the
tongue.
body of Christ
So,
and the blood of Christ.
but there's been a lot of discussion about that, and I think it's gotten to a point where, I would say it's countrywide, but then I hear there are people outside of the country even talking about what's going on in Charlotte. And so
That's wild to see when we tune into stuff. That it is a nation and in some cases worldwide because of the interaction with Rome and other people hearing about the changes.
And I understand that there was recently, I think the 7th through the 8th, possibly, I think they call it a consistory in Rome, where Pope Leo and the Vatican host all of these cardinals to come together to talk about discernment and collaboration, and they hold some council essentially about, how the Pope goes to continue governing the church as a whole. And I know a lot of people were very interested to see and hear if he was going to just continue on pushing the Pope Francis agenda, or if he wanted to do his own thing. And it kind of remains to be seen, like, what way that goes. But I know one of the things that's a little odd is that there was supposed to be some time dedicated for the bishops and cardinals to speak directly about the traditional Catholic Mass. And I understand that Cardinal Arthur Roach almost handed out like a 2-page preparatory document before discussion, just to say, like, this is the way that it's going to be. And it was completely against the Latin Mass.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's very weird. I don't know all of the ins and outs of it, and I don't want to speak in a way that would cause scandal. So I'm trying to be tactful in how I speak about this. But I do understand that he handed out a document, almost like a cheat sheet, before discussion, that this is the way it's going to be. And I don't know what the outcome of that is.
Yeah.
So
it is a time where we're both trying to, like, take in information of what's happening, be prayerful, and then figure out where we actually need to act and where we need to let God act.
Yeah. There's so many priests and so many people that I know personally, and it just seems every time I run into a friend, there are different feelings about what is going on. Jessie and I went to a different church last weekend, and the priest seemed rather happy about everything that is going on. So everybody has a different feeling about this, but I would say the majority, and when I say majority, I'm talking about like 99% of the people I know, are very upset about what's going on in the diocese. So
it's a lot of changes at once being thrown out. And they're ones that seem to affect people's prayer life.
Yeah. I'm struggling personally being in the middle of a lot of this, because I'm not seeing anything good. My observation, based on conversations, based on just my own sense of the people around me, and, very, very faithful traditional individuals, folks that are really on fire for their faith and for Catholicism. It's sowing seeds of yuckiness, it seems like, everywhere I turn, and it's difficult to kind of watch and hear, because I don't know that I've seen this in the diocese before. But it's a lot of like distrust, and it's a lot of unhappiness, and it's a lot of like, wow, what is going on? And this wasn't the way it was prior to some of these different rulings and thoughts. And again, at the end of the day, part of what I pray about is how do I continue to be charitable and try to be, honorable and faithful and so on and so forth.
It is.
And I want to do that, but I also don't want to be complacent. And I think that that's where I'm struggling, is what I feel is right versus wrong, and being complacent. And
The interesting thing is that this has brought that one change, and there's a couple of them, but the one that we're focusing on right now has brought about a lot of questions and people thinking about things more deeply. And it is interesting to learn that in the U.S., it is the cultural norm through the Catholic Church to stand when receiving the Eucharist and the blood of Christ. But it sounds like the kneelers became more of a thing when the Latin Mass became more popularized in the U.S., or came back more in the U.S.
right.
And that's been fascinating to me to learn about, because there's points on either side of that with the communion rails being there or not being there, because some people could argue that you have your own direct personal relationship with God, and who would not want to kneel before that as you receive, to be in that posture, even just for yourself and your relationship with God. And then there's other people that say that takes away from that, everybody else in line and in the pews ready to go up and receive. That action of kneeling and taking a moment might take away and distract those other people. And your relationship with God should be between you and God. But back around to the other thing, it's like, but if the information could just be shared, is my thought process. So how I feel, if you care to know,
I do.
is that the information should be shared. People that have a disability and may not either want to kneel, feel the need to kneel, or whatever, have their choice, and they know that it's the cultural norm and it's accepted, and God's not going to be like, you didn't kneel. And then the people that have the personal relationship and feel the need to kneel or want to kneel in front of their Lord should be able to do that. So it's interesting to me that it has been more of it's not just a suggestion.
Right.
And that's where it's been harder.
I think, to go back to something you said, I do think it should be between the person and God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think St. Mark, again, is just a perfect example of the pews are almost separated in half. I don't know how else to explain this, but like the pews, as you're going towards the altar, it's almost split in two. And there's like a set of pews closer to the altar that when communion rolls around, you would walk up and kneel around the communion rail or stand in front of the communion rail to receive communion.
Yeah.
Whereas the back pews, or that second set of pews that's further away from the altar, there are typically kneelers put out, but you could just go up and receive communion in the hand, right? So it's almost
like
your
own choice anyway.
Yeah. And
why did this need to be?
People know that that's the way that it is anytime that they attend Mass there, and people are going to go where it's comfortable for them to receive communion, because it's between them and God. And I think that should just be the end of it.
It's almost like it's been around for so long and it's been an option for so long. Why not just continue to let people choose? I also have been sitting in adoration, and I watch different people's postures when they come in, sometimes when my eyes are open or my attention's toward it, and it feels like a similar situation. Some people prostrate themselves completely on the ground in front of the Eucharist and want to give their respect in that way. Some people kneel just a tiny bit. Some people kneel all the way. Some people go all the way up to where the Eucharist is and kneel. So I think you have to find your own way in that space. So I'm wondering what the difference is, and I'm not really getting an answer on that as a layperson.
I think a piece of this that's also kind of interesting to me, and I haven't quite wrapped my head around, is we've talked about this, I think, ad nauseum during 2025, receiving communion, right? If you believe that transubstantiation is a miracle, I don't understand why you wouldn't kneel and receive directly on the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And I know
If
it's the
you're
norm
able.
in the United States. I get it.
Yeah.
I hear you. But if we really, truly believe that, why wouldn't you want to encourage or at least leave the option open for receiving in that reverent way? And that's it. That's kind of like where it begins and ends for me. Leave the door open. I'll be curious this year if Pope Leo winds up getting involved in any way, shape, or form.
Because we have seen that a couple of the priests reached out to Rome and the dubia thing.
Yeah. The dubia is something I had never heard of.
Me either. So from our diocese, they reached out to a small number of priests, right? Reached out to Rome.
I don't think it was a small number. I think it was a pretty large number.
Okay.
You know?
Good way to say that would probably be a certain number of priests reached out, enough where they could put together a letter and ask the questions of what should be the norm in the Catholic Church.
So just to be clear, dubia is the plural form of the Latin word dubium, meaning doubt or question. And it refers to a formal request for clarification on matters of doctrine, canon law, liturgy, or pastoral practice. They're typically submitted by cardinals, bishops, or high-ranking clergy directly to the Pope, Vatican dicasterary, or relevant church authorities to resolve uncertainties or seek official interpretations. This practice has historical roots and is a standard way to address ambiguities in church teaching or documents.
It's interesting that you're saying it's historical, because I was just, as you were reading that, I was wondering how many times that the option of the dubia happened to reach out to Rome when there was not like social media to pass around, hey, this is happening.
Right. So they're typically associated with cardinals, but it looks like one in 2020 or 2016 was written to Pope Francis about the Amoris Laetitia regarding marriage and the sacraments. And then again in 2023, ahead of the Synod on synodality, which is all too relevant.
Wow, so it's not very common for that to happen. Because if you're saying 2016 and then not until...
Right.
Okay. I was wondering if
and those
other
are examples,
dioceses,
so I don't know,
happened.
You know, I'm sure there's a list somewhere of... The piece that I'm not clear on is if there is a dubia written, my thought would be that it must be responded to. Because the last thing that you want is for people that are obedient to the church not to receive any kind of response, especially after a question of liturgy or mass or what have you, right? Like if you didn't have an answer to that, that wouldn't be good. I would imagine it wouldn't be ignored is ultimately what I'm getting at.
Yes, because we don't want schisms within the church to happen.
So, yeah, kind of interesting. And I don't know where that winds up, but time will tell. I think 2026 is going to be very interesting. Just to go back to an earlier point I made about Pope Francis and Pope Leo kind of carrying his torch, so to speak, continuing to almost like Pope Francis passing away had things on his desk. Pope Leo has continued to carry those things. Now that we're a year in, does Pope Leo continue to push that agenda, or does he begin to become his own pope? And what does that look like? And I don't think anybody knows yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that a change that he's made right away is the consistory that I talked about earlier. I think Pope Francis only had those annually. Per my understanding, Pope Leo wants to make a change and actually do that on a quarterly basis, which is already a change.
Yeah.
So, like I said, time will tell. We'll see where it goes.
And this year is the something, and you can look it up for me because I don't have a computer in front of me, but number of years anniversary of Saint Francis of Assisi. So he declared it another year of Jubilee, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You can look it up. What is this year in relation to Saint Francis of Assisi? Can you look it up for us?
Yeah, I can go find it. And while I'm looking it up, I can also tell you that I just read that it seems like we're on the verge or cusp of the beatification of
Fulton Sheen.
Yeah, Archbishop Fulton Sheen. So
that's awesome.
Very important to us because of podcasting and his work in radio and broadcast.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church is commemorating the 800th anniversary of the death of St.
800th.
Francis of Assisi, who passed away on October 3rd, 1226. To mark that milestone, Pope Leo proclaimed a special Franciscan Jubilee year, or Year of St. Francis, running from January 10th, 2026 to January 10th, 2027.
Thought that was neat that our Jubilee gets to continue for different reasons.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Because last year was the year of Jubilee and Hope. Every 25 years.
Key elements include plenary indulgences. Let's see. There's going to be a number of global events, like going right up through the Feast of St. Francis. And then...
That makes sense because October's right before all of the Christmas-ish things that would happen.
Yeah, I'm curious what that ultimately winds up being. And I believe Bishop Martin is a Franciscan, so gonna be an interesting year.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes,
but that's how I spent my winter vacation.
I spent mine packing things and going through things in our house, trying to clear out spaces from our moving. I have thought many times that we could rename our podcast to something moving because I feel like that has been a subject that we've talked about so many times for our own moving. And now my mom with debilitating Parkinson's is now moving to a handicap accessible apartment close to us. So we are over the next couple of weeks helping make that happen. So if we seem a little sporadic, that's why.
Be patient with us and pray for us.
Please. Prayers, please.
And pray for Kim.
Yes, because it's a big change. She's going from a house with lots of extra storage to an apartment. And it's a lovely apartment, but as anyone who's done a move from a larger space to a smaller space, that is a big change.
Yeah, it's a lot of...
and having Parkinson's on top of that is very hard.
A lot of decision making and a lot of making things line up appropriately from a moving perspective, from a packing perspective.
As we're recording this, we still don't know how it's all going to happen and come together. The moving process. So, like, how do we move the things and then the mom? So we have to figure out those logical steps. There's only so many answers, but actually figuring out what's best to keep her most comfortable. And then this year is the 20th anniversary of what happened with my dad and my sisters. So that's just to pepper in there a little bit of extra fun, ironic, not fun.
That's coming up on the 20th, right?
Correct. The 20th of January is the 20 years since all of that awfulness happened.
Well, is there anything else that you want to add?
It's interesting how many people I've talked to that sound like they had a hard year last year. And I have added that to my prayers for the people that have shared that with me. And I think I just want to request that of people listening to us. Could you please keep us in your prayers? And we will continue to keep our listeners in our prayers.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Because from the outside, you really don't know what someone's going through.
Mm-mm.
Even if you ask, sometimes you don't get the full picture. Prayers are important.
Amen.
In my experience, sometimes it feels like the only thing that keeps you going. It's like, I know people are praying for me. I think that's what's carrying me. That's all. What about you?
It's going to be an interesting year from a work perspective and from a personal perspective. I don't think that there's anything more dangerous than taking time off and having time to unplug for a little bit, because you just begin to think about where your life is and what you want to do and whether or not what you're doing is fulfilling. And I seem to go through this not just in this December to January period where you have off for a considerable amount of time, but any time really that I unplug and go on vacation. And so much of it to me comes down to, like, where am I providing value? And am I getting satisfaction out of what I'm doing? And so just kind of in the throes of all of the different pieces that I spoke about that I'm learning regarding apologetics and, what else do I want to do with my life? What else do I continue to speak about and talk about? Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. And how do I action it? How do I figure out how to just make those things happen rather than continuing to just talk about them ad nauseum? So
That's hard for both of us.
yeah,
Talking about ideas of things that we would like to do and then either life consuming and not allowing that to happen, or our own choices not allowing that to happen. But in watching you and listening to the things that you've shared, it does seem like there is a change in you from my perspective. It's almost like I can actually see a difference in, like, giving it over to God versus what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Yeah. I think what I wish, what I wish and what hurts me sometimes is I'll go into confession, for example, and I will talk to the priest about, I don't even know if it's patience. And I can also discern the fact that God is not a vending machine. But I think I want just so badly to figure out whatever the hell the path is that I need to be on. And I wish that I could just focus some of this energy of discontent and just sometimes I am jealous of people that can get into a job and just say, like, I may not love a job, but it puts food on the table and it keeps a roof over my head, and it's just the thing that you do. And I'm jealous of that for that reason, because I think people just have the ability to put up blinders and focus on that. And I can't. It's like every fiber of my being rebels against that. And it's almost like there's a calling to something different and to something greater. And I just wish that I could figure that out and be at ease with whatever that is. And even when I go into confession, back to what I was saying before I interrupted myself, I've actually kind of discussed that with a priest on and off several times, and I'm just not getting that answer that I want. And so
it's like you almost want them to be able to help direct you.
Yeah.
And they're not.
And that's not necessarily their fault or anything. So,
no.
But it's
kind of the same with your relationship with God.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
So, if you could just pray for me about that, that would be.
You're trying to find what your vocation or vocations are outside of marriage.
Yeah, I just wish I could take some talents that I have and actually put them into something useful, whether it's my voice or whether it's, maybe something musical. I don't know. I have no idea. Building something. I love to do things with my hands, so I don't know. But there's this weird dichotomy sometimes where it's like you still have to earn certain amounts of money in order to keep the house afloat.
Yep.
So, you can't simply unplug and become a carpenter like in training or something like that. You have to
figure out how to do that after work.
Exactly.
When you're exhausted.
Yeah. So just continue to wrestle with that. So you asked, that is my deep response to what you asked.
I think that's a good thing to share with listeners because they can add it to their prayers. And if they know of anyone who's a carpenter who wants to take you on as an apprentice and give you some joy in the process, you could advertise we'll work for free to learn.
And I totally would. Even if it is nights and weekends, I just want to understand how things work.
And I think back to our move to our house, both of us look around and wish that we could do more with our hands. And we wish we knew how to do things more.
Oh, yeah.
But it's difficult to find when you don't just have a family member who's like always taught you. It's difficult to find people who want to take that on.
Well, that is, that's our first show for 2026. So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And Merry Christmas to all of those we didn't say Merry Christmas to.
Yes. And to all a good night. Just kidding.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.